Richard is a powerful businessman, but he cannot connect with his daughter, who stopped speaking after her mother's death. Everything begins to change when Camilla, a humble young woman, enters the house looking for work. Her presence awakens forgotten emotions and breaks the silence that dominated the family. Together, they discover that sometimes it is necessary to lose everything to understand what truly matters. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching us from. We continue. I promise this will be the best story you'll ever hear in your life. The golden afternoon sun was descending over the New York City skyline as Richard Miller observed the city from his 35th floor office. At 42, he commanded Miller Constructions, one of the largest real estate conglomerates in the United States. His signature was on half of the new luxury developments in the city, in exclusive condominiums in the Hamptons, and in shopping centers spread across the country. From where he stood, he could see 3 of his most imposing buildings, symbols of the empire he had built with iron determination. And, as many whispered through corporate corridors, an ambition that often ignored limits. "Mr. Miller, the meeting with the investors starts in 5 minutes." Priscilla's voice, his executive assistant, interrupted his thoughts through the intercom. Richard adjusted his Italian silk tie and took a last look at the numbers in the quarterly report. The merger with the Santos Construction Group was generating more problems than anticipated, mainly due to disagreements with Ferdinand Adams, his partner and friend since their engineering college days. What had started as a partnership based on trust was now transforming into a silent battle for power and the company's ethical direction. The Washington, D.C. bidding documents are in the blue envelope. "As you requested," Priscilla continued, avoiding his gaze as he passed her desk. It was the effect he had on employees since the accident, a mixture of respect, fear, and a compassion he despised. The meeting was like all the others in recent weeks, tense, calculated, with Ferdinand subtly questioning every strategic decision. When it finally ended, Richard dismissed everyone with an impatient gesture. "We need to talk," Ferdinand said, remaining seated. "The board is concerned about the methods you're using to win the cultural complex bid." Richard's expression hardened. "Perfectly legal and customary methods in the market." "Veiled bribery is what I'm hearing behind the scenes," Ferdinand retorted, standing up. "That's not what we built this company for, Richard. Marianne would never approve." "Don't mention her name," Richard cut him off, his voice low and dangerous. "You don't have that right." Ferdinand shook his head with an expression of genuine regret. "You've changed, my friend. Since the accident, it seems you've forgotten who you were." "Perhaps I've discovered who I need to be," Richard replied, pressing the private elevator button. The meeting is over. The mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut, with its 1,500 square meters, lagoon-shaped pool and impeccable gardens, looked like something out of a magazine. Inside, however, it was like an elegant mausoleum. Richard crossed the entrance hall, ignoring the greetings of the staff. The voice of Mrs. Eleanor Henderson, the housekeeper who had served the family for over 20 years, reached him as he headed for the stairs. "Mr. Miller, Sophia's nutritionist said she didn't eat anything again today." Richard stopped, feeling the familiar weight settle in his chest. "And what did the psychologist suggest this time?" "Perhaps you could have dinner with her?" "It's been 3 days since—" "I have a video conference with Chinese investors in an hour," he interrupted, checking his watch. "Ask Denise to stay with her tonight. I'll try to go up before Sophia sleeps." Mrs. Eleanor Henderson pressed her lips together, but nodded in silence. Richard sensed the disapproval, as he noted in all the glances in the house. No one said it, but everyone thought it. He was failing as a father. How could he explain that every minute beside Sophia was torture, a constant reminder of what he had lost and, worse, of his guilt? He went up anyway, pulled by a force greater than his pain. He found his daughter in the room, decorated with butterflies and clouds painted on the ceiling. At 5 years old, Sophia Miller had her mother's brown eyes and dark, curly, abundant hair. She was sitting on the floor, lining up a row of dolls in absolute silence. "Hi, Princess," Richard said, kneeling beside her. Sophia looked at him, but neither smiled nor spoke a word. Her eyes, once full of light, now seemed like empty windows. 2 years since the accident. 2 years since he had last heard his daughter's voice. On the day Marianne had left home after their devastating argument. "I brought a gift for you," he continued, handing her a small box. Inside was a delicate bracelet with a butterfly pendant. "It's to match your room." The girl took the bracelet, examined it unenthusiastically, and placed it beside the doll's. Richard felt the rejection like a stab. What did he expect? That jewels would replace presence, love, the mother she had lost? "Daddy has to work now," he said, standing up. "Tomorrow we can go to the park. What do you think?" No answer. There was never an answer. Richard took a deep breath and left, closing the door softly. In the hallway he found Denise, the nanny, who immediately entered the room. At least Sophia accepted her company, although she remained in her cocoon of silence. The night advanced with Richard immersed in spreadsheets and emails. The mansion fell asleep while he continued in his office, the only light on in that luxurious mausoleum. When he finally succumbed to exhaustion, he passed by Sophia's room. The door was ajar. He peeked inside. The girl was sleeping, clutching Marianne's old silk scarf, one of the few objects of her mother she always kept with her. Richard felt the familiar knot in his throat. How would he tell her one day? How would he confess that the argument with Marianne that morning had been about divorce? That the last words exchanged were bitter accusations? That perhaps, just perhaps, if he hadn't been so cruel, so inflexible, she wouldn't have driven off in such anger, in such a hurry. That night, like so many others, Richard Miller slept in his solitary room, haunted by memories and regrets. On the other side of the city, someone who would completely change his life was preparing for a job interview at the Miller mansion. Camilla Stone, 26, a recent graduate in pedagogy and a specialist in early childhood education, had no idea how her path would intertwine with that of that broken family, nor how her heart, already so occupied with the younger siblings she supported alone, would find space to love and heal the wounds of a man who seemed made of stone and a child trapped in her own silence. In a two-room house in the farthest reaches of the east side boroughs of New York City, Camilla reviewed her resume while her siblings slept. Lucas, 12, and Bianca, 10, had depended on her since their mother's abandonment 3 years prior. The salary as a domestic worker in a family home, even if below what she deserved with her education, would be a lifeline. With this thought, she finally fell asleep, dreaming of a less arduous future for her small family, unaware that she would soon enter a world of wealth, power, secrets, and eventually, a love that would defy all conventions. The interview took place on a Monday morning. Camilla arrived at the Miller mansion gate 30 minutes early, impressed by the property's magnitude. The front garden looked like it was out of a decor magazine, with marble fountains and strategically placed sculptures. She pressed the intercom with trembling hands. "Good morning, I'm Camilla Stone. I have an interview scheduled with Mrs. Eleanor Henderson." The electronic gate opened with a discreet hum. Camilla walked along the polished stone path to the main entrance, where the housekeeper was already waiting for her. Mrs. Eleanor Henderson was a 60-year-old woman, with an upright posture and an evaluating gaze, but with a gentle smile that softened her austere appearance. "Punctuality is essential in this house," she commented, leading Camilla through an entrance hall as wide as the entire apartment, where she lived with her siblings. "Mr. Miller demands excellence in everything." The interview was thorough. Camilla explained her pedagogy background, omitting that she would accept the domestic job out of financial necessity. She mentioned her responsibility for her siblings, emphasizing her organizational skills and dedication. "The vacancy is for general services, with a focus on laundry and kitchen support," explained Mrs. Eleanor Henderson, "but I appreciate your education. We have a delicate situation in this house." The housekeeper hesitated, looking at the door as if fearing to be overheard. "The master's daughter, Sophia, is going through difficulties. She hasn't spoken since the incident with her mother. Perhaps your experience with children could be useful, although that is not the role you are being hired for." Camilla nodded, feeling a pang of compassion. "I perfectly understand the limits of the role. If hired, I will respect the house rules." A week later, Camilla began her work at the Miller mansion. The routine was exhausting. Waking up at 4:30 a.m., taking 2 buses and a subway, arriving at 6:30 a.m. to organize the laundry room. The salary, however, would allow her to pay for Lucas's orthopedic treatment and Bianca's tutoring lessons. In the first few days, she only glimpsed the owner of the house from afar, always in a hurry, always serious. The staff spoke of him in respectful and fearful whispers. Sophia, the silent girl, rarely left her room or the backyard, always accompanied by the nanny Denise, an efficient young woman, but visibly exhausted by the lack of progress in communication with the child. In the second week, while organizing sheets in the second-floor laundry room, Camilla felt a gaze upon her. She turned and found Sophia standing at the door watching her with curiosity. "Hello," Camilla said naturally, as if speaking to any talking child. "My name is Camilla. I'm folding these sheets that smell of lavender. Do you want to smell them?" To her surprise, the girl approached and touched the fabric, bringing it to her face. Camilla continued talking calmly, telling her about the shapes she saw in the clouds through the window, about how her sister Bianca loved to invent stories for each of them. "Did you know that clouds are like magical cotton? They travel through the sky carrying water to the plants, then come back for more." Sophia watched, fascinated. The next day she appeared again. And the next, Camilla began telling stories while she worked, without pressure, without expectations. Within a week, the girl was already helping her fold small items, though still without uttering a word. Denise, the nanny, noticed the change. "I don't know what you're doing, but she's never approached anyone new like this." Camilla shrugged. "I'm not doing anything special, just talking as I would with any child." One day, while sorting clothes, Camilla began softly singing a song from her childhood. Sophia, who was playing with colorful buttons in the corner, looked up, interested. "Do you want to learn?" Camilla asked. "It's a song about a whale that travels the seas looking for friends." Without waiting for an answer, she continued singing and making hand gestures. Sophia timidly imitated her. Camilla had an idea. "You know what would be fun? To see the world from up high. When I was little like you, my dad would put me on his shoulders, and I felt like the tallest person in the universe." Carefully, Camilla knelt. "Want to try?" I promised to hold on tight. Sophia hesitated, but then approached. Camilla gently lifted her onto her shoulders, holding her little legs firmly. The girl clung to her hair, tense at first, but then relaxed. "See? Now you're the queen of the castle. Shall we take a walk to see the world from another angle?" Walking slowly through the laundry room, Camilla made Sophia pass under the clotheslines, as if they were going through magical tunnels. The girl began to smile, then to laugh openly, a crystalline sound that filled the room. Encouraged, Camilla sped up a little, gently spinning while making airplane sounds. It was at that exact moment that the door burst open violently. Richard Miller, who had returned early from a trip, attracted by the unusual sounds of laughter, froze upon seeing his daughter on the employee's shoulders, both laughing. "What is the meaning of this?" he thundered, his face transforming into a mask of fury. "Put my daughter down immediately." Camilla obeyed, carefully placing Sophia on the floor. The girl, frightened by her father's outburst, ran to a corner, eyes wide. "Mr. Miller, we were just—" "Silence!" Richard cut her off, approaching menacingly. "Who authorized you to touch my daughter? This is completely irresponsible. What if she fell? What if she got hurt?" Other employees, attracted by the shouting, gathered at the door. Mrs. Eleanor Henderson pushed her way through them, alarmed. "You don't understand," Camilla tried again, pale but firm. Sophia was having fun. She was— "You're fired," Richard declared, trembling with rage. "Gather your things and leave my house immediately." "But sir," Mrs. Eleanor Henderson interceded. "Do you want to lose your job too?" Richard turned to the housekeeper, who recoiled, intimidated. "This woman put my daughter at risk. I don't want explanations." Sophia began to cry silently, reaching out her hands towards Camilla, who was fighting back her own tears. "I just wanted to make her happy," Camilla murmured, her voice choked. "She needs joy play too. She needs safety and responsibility. Things you clearly cannot offer," Richard cut her off. "Denise, take Sophia to her room. And you," he pointed at Camilla, "you have 15 minutes to disappear." Camilla left the laundry room with her head held high, passing by the group of employees who watched her with expressions of sympathy and consternation. Among them, Charles, the driver, whispered, "He's wrong. We've never seen the girl smile like that since the accident." As she gathered her few belongings in the staff locker room, Camilla cried silently. Not for the lost job, although financial worry was immediate, but for the fragile bond she had established with that wounded child, now brutally severed. On the other side of the mansion, Richard locked himself in his office, ignoring Mrs. Eleanor Henderson's attempts to talk. Something in the scene he had witnessed deeply disturbed him. It wasn't just concern for Sophia's safety, but the sight of his daughter laughing in a stranger's arms when she wouldn't even open up to him. Was it jealousy, frustration, or the painful reminder that he was failing as a father while drowning in work and guilt? Sophia, now in her room, sat by the window with her favorite teddy bear. For the first time in 2 years, she almost uttered a word, forming it silently with her lips as she looked at the path where Camilla had left. Come back. In the kitchen, the employees commented on the incident in low voices, divided between loyalty to their boss and indignation at the unfair treatment. He doesn't realize he just pushed away the only person who got a reaction from the girl, lamented Irene, the cook. That young woman had something special. And so, as Camilla Stone left the property with a heavy heart and no immediate prospects, a silent storm began to form in the corridors of the Miller mansion, a storm that would force Richard to confront not only his leadership in the company, but also the walls he had built around his own heart. The days that followed in the Miller mansion were marked by an even denser silence. Sophia refused to leave her room, rejected food, and for the first time since the accident, openly expressed her anguish through crying fits that no one could calm. Even the dedicated Denise, who tried everything to cheer her up, found only resistance and accusatory looks from the girl. On a particularly difficult morning, Richard cancelled an important meeting upon being informed that his daughter had gone almost 24 hours without eating. He found her sitting on the closet floor, hugging a laundry towel that, he would later discover, had the scent of the soap Camilla used. Sophia, please. Irene made that big chocolate fudge cake you like. Richard tried, kneeling beside his daughter. The girl turned her face away, ignoring him. Princess, Daddy is worried about you. No reaction. The pediatrician, called in a hurry, suggested hospitalization if the situation persisted for another day. Desperate, Richard spent the night beside his daughter's bed, something he hadn't done since the accident. Around 3 in the morning, exhausted, he fell asleep in the armchair. He was awakened at dawn by Mrs. Eleanor Henderson, who brought a tray with coffee. Did she sleep? The housekeeper asked, placing the tray on the small table. Richard nodded, running his hand over his tired face. Finally, around 5. What's happening, Eleanor? Why this sudden worsening? The woman hesitated, nervously fiddling with her apron. I need to tell you something, sir. Mrs. Eleanor Henderson then revealed what she had discovered through the other staff. At the moment Richard had caught Sophia on Camilla's shoulders. The girl wasn't just laughing. She had spoken. Simple but clear words. Higher. I want to see from up there. Are you telling me my daughter spoke? Richard jumped up, incredulous. Why wasn't I told this immediately? No one heard it at the time, sir. It was Camilla who told Irene later before leaving. With all the confusion, I only found out the next day. Richard felt his blood run cold. Sophia had spoken, and he, in his wounded pride, had expelled the only person who had achieved this miracle. We need to find her, he decided, picking up the phone. Now. But Camilla Stone had disappeared. The address on her employment record was false. In fact, it was the address of her cousin, with whom she had temporarily stayed before getting the job. The phone number belonged to a public payphone that no one answered. Richard, accustomed to solving any problem with money and power, found himself frustrated and powerless. Hire a detective, he ordered his lawyer. I want this woman found in 48 hours, whatever the cost. The investigative work took a week, not 48 hours. Meanwhile, Sophia continued her silent decline, accepting only minimal food, enough to keep her from hospitalization. Richard, divided between concern for his daughter and growing problems at the company, where Ferdinand was advancing with internal audits, questioning his decisions, could barely sleep. Finally, the detective presented his report. Camilla lived in a housing project on the outskirts of New York City, in the neighborhood of East New York, Brooklyn. She supported her 2 younger siblings, Lucas and Bianca, by herself, working 2 jobs since her dismissal, as an assistant at a preschool in the morning and a bakery attendant at night. She was studying pedagogy with a partial scholarship, completing the payment with occasional weekend babysitting jobs. She has a difficult life, the detective commented, showing photos of the small apartment and the children. From what I gathered, she's a young woman of impeccable reputation. Neighbors describe her as dedicated and hardworking, the type who never gives up. Richard observed the images thoughtfully. One in particular caught his attention. Camilla sitting at the kitchen table, helping her brother with homework, an expression of patience and affection on her tired face. The same expression he had glimpsed when he saw her with Sophia, before his anger blinded everything else. That same afternoon, Richard drove personally to East New York, Brooklyn, dismissing his driver and security, wanting discretion. The almost 2-hour journey from Greenwich, Connecticut, to that distant district in the east side boroughs of New York City was like a trip to another world. From luxurious condominiums to popular housing projects, New York City revealed its brutal inequality. He found Camilla's block, a simple but clean building, with potted plants decorating the entrance. He climbed to the 4th floor via the stairs, as the elevator was out of order. He stopped before door 42, took a deep breath and rang the doorbell. It was Bianca who opened the door, a 10-year-old girl with colorful braids and suspicious eyes. "Hi," Richard said, uncomfortable. "Is your sister here?" "Who are you?" the girl asked without fully opening the door. "My name is Richard Miller. I worked with Camilla." Bianca narrowed the gap in the door even further. "She's not here. Come back another day." "Bianca, who is it?" Camilla's voice came from inside the apartment, approaching. When she saw Richard, her expression transformed into shock, then into contained fury. "What are you doing here?" she asked, positioning herself protectively in front of her sister. "I need to talk to you," Richard replied, suddenly aware of how out of place he must look there, in his Italian suit and leather shoes. "It's about Sophia, your daughter, the one you prevented me from saying goodbye to properly after humiliating me in front of everyone." Camilla crossed her arms. "Why should I listen to anything you have to say?" "Because she stopped eating. Because she's wasting away," he replied with painful sincerity. "And because I now know she spoke to you." Camilla's face softened slightly. "Who told you?" "Mrs. Eleanor Henderson." "Please, can we talk?" Camilla hesitated, looking at her sister. "Bianca, please go with Lucas to the room. He's finishing his math homework. See if he's doing it right." The girl gave Richard a suspicious look before leaving. Camilla fully opened the door, allowing him to enter. The apartment was small but cozy. Books stacked on makeshift shelves, schoolwork pinned to the refrigerator with colorful magnets, a worn but clean sofa with crocheted cushions. "I only have 15 minutes before I leave for work at the bakery," Camilla said, indicating the sofa. "Be brief." Richard sat down uncomfortably, trying to organize his thoughts. "First, I want to apologize for the way I treated you. It was unfair and cruel." "It wasn't just unfair," Camilla interrupted. "It was humiliating. You didn't even let me explain what was happening. Do you know why Sophia was on my shoulders? Because she was communicating in her own way. She wanted to see from up there." Those were her exact words. The first words she's uttered in years, from what I understand. "It's true," Richard confirmed, his voice choked. "And I ruined everything." "You didn't just ruin it for me," Camilla continued, still indignant. "You harmed your own daughter." She was finally opening up, finding a way to express what she felt. Traumatized children need joy, play, to feel safe, to trust the world again. Not the funeral atmosphere you maintain in that house. Richard lowered his eyes, absorbing the blow. It was exactly what he feared to hear, the confirmation of his failure as a father. "After I left that job," Camilla continued, "I went through terrible times. We almost lost this apartment. I had to explain to my siblings why we suddenly didn't have money for meat on the weekend. And that wasn't the worst part." "What happened?" Richard asked, alarmed. "The building manager approached me, saying she received an offer to evict me from here, a kind of bribe to invent infractions in my lease agreement. Someone really wanted to see me gone without stability." Richard frowned. "It wasn't me, if that's what you're implying." "I didn't think it was you," Camilla replied. "It doesn't seem like your style." It was someone who identified himself as a representative of Miller Constructions, a man named Ferdinand something. "Ferdinand Adams, my partner?" Richard felt a wave of anger growing in his chest. He had no authority to do that. "I don't understand why he would do such a thing." "Perhaps because he realized I saw things in your company that I shouldn't have seen," Camilla suggested. "Those folders in the laundry room. The ones hidden among the sheets with documents about the Washington, D.C. bid. I didn't read them, but I noticed they were there when they shouldn't have been. Richard paled. The documents that proved irregularities in the bid, which he had temporarily hidden during an internal audit visit. The laundry room attendant would be the last person anyone would suspect. Ferdinand must have thought you could be a dangerous witness, Richard concluded. Typical of him, paranoid and calculating. Your partner seems like a dangerous man, Camilla commented, checking her watch. My time is running out, Mr. Miller. What exactly do you want from me? Richard took a deep breath. I want you to come back to work in my house, to help my daughter. Your method, whatever it is, worked when nothing else did. I will pay double your previous salary. Camilla laughed humorlessly. I'm not a mercenary, Mr. Miller. It's not about money. 3 times the salary, then, and a car at your disposal to come and go. You still don't understand, Camilla shook her head. I won't return to that house to be treated as a disposable servant, to be humiliated at the first occasion. I do something you don't understand. Sophia doesn't need another person who will disappear from her life. If I come back, it will be on my terms. What are they? Richard asked, surprised by his own willingness to negotiate. I will be hired as an early childhood educator, not a domestic worker. I will have autonomy to develop activities with Sophia, without interference. My siblings will be enrolled in quality private schools, and you will pay for my college until I finish my pedagogy degree, with all the specializations I choose. Richard blinked, astonished by the demands. Not by the financial cost, which was negligible for his wealth, but by the young woman's audacity. You are not in a position to make demands, he said, trying to regain control of the situation. And you are not in a position to refuse, Camilla retorted calmly, standing up. It's your daughter's health that's at stake, not my career. I can continue my life exactly as it is. I can even get something better with my education. But Sophia, she left the sentence hanging. Richard also stood up, defeated. All right. Your terms are acceptable. One last condition, Camilla added, staring him in the eyes. You will apologize publicly, in front of all the employees, for the way you treated me, so they know that no one deserves to be humiliated, no matter what position they hold. This was the most difficult condition. Richard Miller had never publicly apologized to anyone in his entire professional life. His hesitation was visible. That's the deal, Camilla insisted. Take it or leave it. From the next room came Lucas's voice, calling his sister for help with his homework. Camilla looked at her watch again. I need to go. I'm already late for my shift at the bakery. When can you start? Richard asked, extending his hand to seal the agreement. Camilla ignored the outstretched hand. When you fulfill the public apology part, call me at this number when you're ready. She wrote down her phone number on a piece of paper. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a life to manage. Richard left the small apartment with a strange mixture of humiliation and hope. Outside the building, he watched the lights coming on in the windows as night fell over the outskirts of New York City. He thought of Sophia, alone in her luxurious room with all the money in the world at her disposal, but deprived of what truly mattered. He thought of Camilla, struggling to keep her small family together, rich in dignity and determination. For the first time in years, Richard Miller felt ashamed of himself. The news spread quickly through the corridors of the Miller mansion. Employees were summoned for an extraordinary meeting in the main hall at 10 a.m. Speculations buzzed. Mass layoffs, closure of the house, moving abroad. In years of service, no one remembered Richard Miller gathering all employees simultaneously. Punctually at 10, the businessman entered the room where 28 employees awaited, tense. Beside him were Mrs. Eleanor Henderson and, to everyone's surprise, Camilla Stone, who observed everything with a serene expression, though her heart was pounding. Good morning, Richard began, uncomfortable with the fixed gazes on him. He who commanded board meetings with dozens of executives without batting an eye felt strangely vulnerable. I called you here to witness something important. A murmur ran through the room as Richard, to everyone's astonishment, walked up to Camilla and, in an unthinkable gesture, knelt before her. Mrs. Stone, he said in a clear voice, audible to all, I sincerely apologize for the way I treated you. It was unfair, cruel, and totally unacceptable. You did not deserve such humiliation, especially when you were only helping my daughter. The room fell into absolute silence. Some employees exchanged incredulous glances. From today onwards, Richard continued, still kneeling, Ms. Stone returns to this house not as a laundry employee, but as Sophia's special educator. She will have complete autonomy in her work and deserves the same respect you dedicate to me, even more so considering my recent behavior. Standing up, Richard addressed everyone. This house has been a place of sadness for too long. It's time for changes. I thank each of you for your dedication during these difficult years. If you stay with us, I promise a more humane and just environment. When the meeting ended, many employees approached Camilla to hug her and express support. Charles, the driver, patted her on the shoulder. You achieved the impossible, girl. I've never seen the boss bend like that for anyone. Mrs. Eleanor Henderson, with tears in her eyes, held Camilla's hands. Welcome back, my dear. That girl needs you so much. The reunion between Camilla and Sophia was moving. The child, who had been wasting away for weeks, lit up when she saw the young woman enter her room. She ran into her arms, clinging as if fearing she would disappear again. Hi, little one, Camilla said softly. I missed you. Sophia didn't speak, but her eyes communicated everything. The trust had been broken. It wouldn't be rebuilt instantly. Camilla knew she would need to regain that safe space they had created before. The first few days were for adaptation. Camilla moved into a comfortable room in the staff area, bringing some personal belongings to make it cozy. Lucas and Bianca were enrolled in Horizon Academy, one of the best educational institutions in New York City, causing a stir among coordinators when they learned that the tuition fees would be paid directly by Miller Constructions. Richard maintained a respectful distance from Camilla's work, although he discreetly observed the transformations. Sophia began eating regularly again. Her complexion regained its color. She still didn't speak, but communicated through much more vivid gestures and facial expressions. One morning, Camilla surprised Richard with an unexpected proposal. We need to transform that backyard garden, she said, showing drawings made by Sophia. The girl needs a special space for natural therapy. Natural therapy? Richard questioned. Therapeutic gardening, Camilla explained. Contact with the earth, with the growth of plants, has a proven effect on emotional recovery, especially in traumatized children. Thus was born the Whisper Garden, as Sophia named it in one of her drawings. For weeks, a part of the immense garden was redesigned. Raised spiral-shaped flower beds, a small fountain, colorful stone paths, shaded areas for reading, and a central space for group activities. Why Whisper Garden? Richard asked Camilla as they watched Sophia help the gardener plant flowers. She explained it to me through drawings, Camilla replied. It's where plants whisper stories to those who know how to listen. In the Miller Constructions office, meanwhile, tension was escalating. Ferdinand Adams, even temporarily suspended, mobilized allies on the board against Richard. The external audit, initially focused on personal expenses, broadened its scope to all operations, delaying projects and generating instability. He wants to destroy me, Richard commented during a late dinner with Camilla after a particularly tense meeting. It's no longer about the company or business. It's personal. Why so much hatred? Camilla asked. Weren't you friends? Richard poured himself some wine, thoughtful. We were, or I thought we were. Now I realize Ferdinand always felt secondary. Even as a founding partner, it was my name that became associated with the company's success, my vision that prevailed in important decisions. And the matter of the Washington, D.C. bid, the documents I found in the laundry room, Richard hesitated. That conversation would inevitably lead him to dangerous territory. Ferdinand was willing to do things I initially rejected. Bribes, kickbacks to win bids, but eventually, I conceded in some cases. So he has material to harm you, Camilla concluded without judgment in her voice. Yes, and I have material to harm him too. It's a destructive stalemate, Richard sighed. But that's not the worst. What could be worse? He knew details about my argument with Marianne before the accident. Things only she could have told him. Camilla frowned, connecting the dots. Do you think they... I don't know. But Marianne and Ferdinand were always close. They studied together before they met me. He was our best man at the wedding. Richard looked at the wine in his glass as if seeking answers in the ruby liquid. Sometimes I wonder if there was more to that story than friendship. The conversation was interrupted by a sharp cry coming from upstairs, Sophia's room. Both ran upstairs, finding the girl sitting on the bed, trembling, her face bathed in tears. awakened from a nightmare. When she saw Camilla, she stretched out her arms in a silent plea for comfort. "It's okay, little one," Camilla whispered, hugging her. "It was just a bad dream." Richard remained at the door, feeling powerless and excluded from the intimate circle of trust between his daughter and the educator. But something unexpected happened. Sophia stretched one arm towards him, inviting him to join the hug. That night marked a turning point. For the first time since the accident, Sophia allowed her father to cradle her until she fell asleep. When the girl finally relaxed in Richard's arms, he felt silent tears stream down his face, not of sadness, but of profound gratitude for that small miracle. "You did it," Camilla whispered, observing the scene from a nearby armchair. "She's coming back to you." The next morning, Richard postponed all appointments to stay home. Something had changed within him, a readjusted priority. He joined Sophia and Camilla in the Whisper Garden, where the girl was planting sunflower seeds in small pots. "These flowers follow the sun," Camilla explained. "They turn towards where there is light. It's like people. We need to seek what illuminates us." Sophia picked up an empty pot and handed it to her father, along with a handful of seeds, a clear invitation to participate. Richard sat on the wooden stool, awkward with the gardening tools but determined to be part of that moment. "Like this?" he asked, placing the first seed. Sophia shook her head negatively. She took his small hand and showed him the correct depth, then covered the seed with soft soil. Richard followed her instructions, marveling at his daughter's patience. When they finished, Sophia wrote a name on the pot: Dad. Camilla watched from a distance, giving them space for that reconnection. In recent months, her relationship with Richard had evolved from initial tension to mutual respect, and now to something neither dared to name. Their nightly conversations in the library after Sophia fell asleep became a tacit ritual. They talked about the girl, of course, but also about books, philosophy, dreams, and disappointments. Richard revealed vulnerabilities he had never shared with anyone. Camilla offered perspectives that challenged his most deeply held convictions. The household routine now flowed in a harmony unthinkable months before. Lucas and Bianca, Camilla's siblings, visited on weekends, bringing youthful energy to the previously somber mansion. Sophia loved these moments, following Lucas like a shadow as he practiced capoeira in the garden or helping Bianca with her science projects. One afternoon, while the four were playing hide-and-seek in the gardens, Richard observed from his office window when his phone rang. It was his lawyer with alarming news. "Ferdinand has filed a lawsuit for your removal," he informed gravely. "He alleges emotional instability and diversion of resources. He has testimonies from company employees about your erratic behavior in recent months." "Which employees?" Richard asked, tense. "Priscilla, your former assistant, George from finance, and Robert, the operations manager. All loyal to Ferdinand, apparently." "And the board?" Divided. The extraordinary meeting is scheduled for Monday. You have 4 days to prepare your defense." When he hung up, Richard remained motionless, looking at the garden where his new makeshift family was playing happily. The idea of losing everything he had built professionally was devastating, but nowhere near as painful as the possibility of losing those newly discovered moments of peace. On the Sunday before the decisive meeting, Sophia woke up with a high fever. Her temperature rose alarmingly, reaching 104 degrees Fahrenheit, 40 degrees Celsius. Convulsions followed, causing panic. The on-call pediatrician at the hospital where she was admitted diagnosed viral meningitis, serious but treatable if identified in time. The next 72 hours were the longest of Richard's life. The board meeting was postponed due to the family emergency, but that became secondary. Alternating with Camilla at Sophia's hospital bedside, Richard finally understood the meaning of priority. On the third night, when the fever finally subsided and Sophia slept peacefully, Richard found Camilla in the hospital corridor, exhausted but relieved. "The doctors say the worst is over," she informed him, accepting the coffee he offered. "She's strong, she'll recover completely." Richard nodded, feeling the weight of days without proper sleep. "Thank you. For being here, for knowing what to do, for staying calm when I was falling apart." "We're a team now," Camilla replied simply. "That's what families do." The word family hung between them, laden with implicit meanings. Richard gathered his courage. Camilla, when all this is over, we need to talk about the future. What future? She asked, cautious. Ours, mine, yours. Sophia's, Lucas's, and Bianca's. Together. Camilla put down her coffee cup, surprised by his unusual directness. Richard, I don't think this is the time for— It is exactly the time, he interrupted softly. I almost lost my daughter twice, once to silence and once to this illness. Life is too fragile to postpone what truly matters. Before Camilla could reply, the nurse called them. Sophia had woken up and was asking for both of them. They entered the room together, finding the girl pale but alert. Hi, Princess, Richard said, holding her small hand. How are you feeling? Sophia looked deeply into her father's eyes, then at Camilla, and finally, to everyone's surprise, spoke in a clear voice. Is Camilla like Mommy? The question, so direct and laden with meaning, left them both momentarily speechless. It was Richard who answered first, with an honesty he wouldn't have been capable of months ago. Camilla is special in a different way, Sophia. Your mother will always be your mother. No one will ever take her place in your heart or mine. But yes, Camilla has become very important to us, hasn't she? Sophia nodded, thoughtful. She cares and loves the same. But it hurts less to remember when she's near. Camilla felt tears well up in her eyes, recognizing in the girl's words a healing process that was finally manifesting itself. Sophia was not replacing her mother, but finding a way to integrate the loss into her new reality. Can I call her my second mum? Sophia asked, surprising them again. Richard looked at Camilla, passing the decision to her. There was a silent plea in his eyes, an echo of their interrupted conversation minutes before. You can call me whatever you want, little one, Camilla finally replied, holding Sophia's other hand. What matters is what we feel in here, she pointed to the girl's heart. Can we be a family? Sophia insisted. With Lucas and Bianca also? Richard took a deep breath, finding courage in his daughter's transparency. That's what I want too, Sophia. But Camilla needs to want it too. 3 pairs of eyes turned to Camilla, who felt the weight of that crucial moment. Her life had taken unimaginable turns since she had entered that mansion as a laundry employee. The man in front of her was no longer the arrogant businessman who had humiliated her, but someone transformed by pain, by regret, and finally, by love. We need to take it slow, she finally replied. Building something true takes time. We have all the time in the world, Richard guaranteed, and there was a promise in his gaze that transcended words. That night, while Sophia slept, and Richard finally went home to rest for a few hours before returning to the hospital, Camilla remained in the room, contemplating how life could completely change in just 6 months. She picked up her diary and wrote, Sometimes destiny places us exactly where we need to be, even if the path is painful. A laundry room can transform into a garden. A man of stone can learn to bloom. A silent child can find her voice again. And a young woman determined to merely survive can discover she was born for much more. To heal, to connect, to love. When she closed the diary, Camilla realized Sophia was watching her, awake again. Can't sleep, little one. Sophia shook her head negatively. I'm scared of dreaming about the accident again. It was the first time the girl had directly mentioned the accident. Camilla approached, stroking her hair. Do you want to talk about it? It was my fault, Sophia whispered with tears in her eyes. Mommy was mad because of me. Because of you? Why do you say that, darling? I heard them fighting. Daddy said he wouldn't let Mommy take me away. She left running, crying. Because of me. Camilla's heart ached. Sophia had carried that guilt silently for 2 years, a burden too heavy for such small shoulders. Now she understood the meaning of the bridges in the drawings. They were attempts to reconnect what had been broken, to fix what she believed she had broken. Sophia, listen carefully. It wasn't your fault. Never ever was it your fault. Your parents loved you more than anything. Their fight was between them, adult problems that had nothing to do with you. But they fought because of me. They fought because they both loved you so much that each wanted to be with you. It's like when 2 people want the same star in the sky. It's not the star's fault for being so special, understand? Sophia processed the analogy, tears still flowing. Then why isn't Mommy coming back? Camilla took a deep breath, searching for the right words. Some things we cannot change, Sophia, no matter how much we wish. But we can honor the people we love by living fully, by being happy. Your mother will always be a part of you right here, she touched her heart, even if we can't see her. Like the seeds under the ground? Sophia asked, resorting to the garden metaphors. Exactly like that, Camilla confirmed, amazed by the girl's wisdom. We don't see them, but we know they are there, growing in invisible ways. Sophia became thoughtful, processing that idea. Can I plant a flower for her in our garden? Of course you can. What flower do you think she would like? Find white roses. She always said they were elegant. Then we'll plant white roses as soon as you come home. It will be our special flower bed just to remember her. Sophia smiled softly, closing her eyes. I want to plant a rose for you too, Camilla. What color would my rose be? The answer came as Sophia was already drifting to sleep, her last words before falling asleep. Red, the color of new love. 3 years passed. The Whisper Garden, once a small experimental space in the backyard of the Miller mansion, now occupied almost an acre of land with thematic areas, greenhouses for medicinal plants, and spaces for group therapy. What had begun as an intimate healing project for Sophia had transformed into a reference center for traumatized children from all over New York City. On that spring morning, the garden welcomed its 100th child, served by the Flourish Institute, the foundation created by Richard Miller to disseminate the garden method, now internationally recognized. In the shade of a jaboticaba tree, Sophia, at 9 years old, guided a group of younger children, showing them the different emotional stations of the garden. The courage patch, the path of patience, the fountain of serenity, and here, she explained with surprising ease for her age, is the memory patch, where we plant flowers for people we love but are no longer with us. The children watched, fascinated, the dozens of white rose bushes growing in a perfect semicircle. In the center, a simple plaque, Marianne Miller Garden. From the balcony overlooking the garden, Richard and Camilla observed the scene with silent pride. Sophia was no longer the terrified girl trapped in her cocoon of silence. She had transformed into an eloquent, sensitive child, determined to help others find their own voice. She has your gift, Richard commented, discreetly holding Camilla's hand. She can transform pain into beauty. She had good examples, Camilla replied, smiling. You showed her how to rebuild life from the shards. The last few years had not been easy. The battle for control of Miller Constructions lasted months, with public accusations, lawsuits, and counter-lawsuits. Ferdinand Adams mobilized everything he could against Richard, including revelations about the discussions with Marianne before the accident. The press fed on the scandal, exposing aspects of the family's private life that Richard had carefully protected. At the height of the crisis, when it seemed he would lose both the company and his reputation, Richard made a surprising decision. He sold his majority stake to an international conglomerate. With the money, he created 2 new entities, the Flourish Institute, dedicated to the development and application of the garden method, and the Marianne Miller Foundation, focused on social architecture projects, thus honoring his late wife's interrupted professional dream. I lost the company, but I found my purpose, he declared in his last interview on the subject. Some defeats are, in fact, liberations. Ferdinand got what he so desired, control of Miller Constructions, only to discover that the empire had foundations compromised by years of questionable practices he himself had implemented. 2 years after Richard's departure, the company declared bankruptcy following corruption scandals in government bids. For Camilla, the years brought professional achievements she had never imagined. She completed her master's in therapeutic education with distinction, published scientific articles on the garden method in partnership with Dr. Laura Peterson, and now directed the Flourish Institute, training educators from across the country. Lucas and Bianca, her siblings now teenagers, attended the best schools and developed their own talents. He in environmental engineering, she in medicine. The most significant personal transformation, however, had occurred in the relationship between Richard and Camilla. What had begun as antagonism had evolved into professional respect and finally into a mature and conscious love. They had been living together for 2 years, forming an unconventional family that functioned in its own particular harmony. Yoan's group arrives in an hour for the training workshop, Camilla reminded him, checking her watch. I need to review the presentation material. "And I have the video conference with the partners from Chicago," Richard added. "They are interested in opening a branch of the institute there." The couple parted with a discreet kiss, each going to their respective responsibilities. The institute operated in an annex structure to the mansion, with an independent entrance and its own team. Richard was mainly occupied with fundraising and expansion, while Camilla led the pedagogical and therapeutic aspects. Later that day, after professional activities, the entire family gathered for a special dinner. It was the 5th anniversary of the first planting in the Whisper Garden, a date they celebrated as the true beginning of their collective journey. "I have an announcement," Sophia declared during dessert, with a comical formality for her age. "I've decided what I want to be when I grow up." "And what will that be?" asked Lucas, now a 17-year-old young man. "I want to be an architect like my mom and a therapist like Camilla," she replied with conviction. "I'm going to build therapeutic gardens in hospitals and schools." Richard and Camilla exchanged emotional glances. Sophia had harmoniously integrated her two maternal influences, without conflict or competition, a lesson the adults themselves were still learning. After dinner, while the children watched a movie in the living room, Richard invited Camilla for a night stroll in the Whisper Garden. Under the starry sky and the soft light of strategically placed lanterns, the garden acquired an almost magical atmosphere. "Remember the first time I saw you carrying Sophia on your shoulders in the laundry room?" he asked as they walked hand in hand along the stone paths. "How could I forget?" "You almost killed me with your glare," Camilla laughed. "I was so blind," Richard admitted, "so caught up in my own wounds that I couldn't see the miracle happening before my eyes." "We all have our moments of blindness," Camilla philosophized. "The important thing is to regain sight before it's too late." They arrived at the center of the garden, where a jasmine-covered pergola created an intimate and fragrant space. There, 3 years prior, they had kissed for the first time, after months of a cautious and respectful approach. Richard stopped, turning to Camilla. "I brought you here for a special reason." "I'm noticing," she smiled, observing his unusual nervousness. "These years together have taught me that family is not what is born of blood, but what is built with love. Respect and daily choices," he began. "You transformed not only Sophia, but me too. You taught me to be a better man, a present father, a human being capable of asking for forgiveness and starting anew." From an inside jacket pocket, Richard took out a small velvet box. He knelt in a gesture that poetically echoed that first public apology years ago. "Camilla Stone, would you give me the honor of formalizing what we already are in our hearts? To become my wife, life partner, and officially the second mother Sophia loves so much?" Camilla, usually so eloquent and confident, found herself momentarily speechless. Silent tears streamed down her face when she finally replied, "Yes, Richard. Yes to everything we have built, and to everything we will still build together." When he placed the ring on her finger, an emerald surrounded by small diamonds, representing a miniature garden, Camilla noticed an inscription on the inside. From silence, love was born. The kiss that sealed the commitment was interrupted by applause and shouts of joy. They turned, surprised, and found Sophia, Lucas, and Bianca observing everything from behind a flowering bush. "Finally!" Sophia exclaimed, running to hug them both. "I thought you'd never make it official." "Were you spying?" Richard asked, feigning indignation. "Of course we were," Lucas replied with a mischievous smile. "Sophia orchestrated the whole operation. Codename, Mission Obvious." "Because it was obvious you needed to get married soon," Bianca explained, joining the collective hug. "We were just waiting for you to realize." At that moment, under the stars of New York City and surrounded by the garden that had healed so many wounds, the five formed a perfect circle of hugs and laughter. The mansion that had once been a mausoleum of sadness now pulsed with life and possibilities. The following week, as wedding preparations discreetly began, Richard and Camilla received an unexpected visit. Mrs. Eleanor Henderson, now retired, but still a cherished presence in the family's life, brought with her an old box. "I found this among Miss Marianne's belongings that I kept after the incident," the housekeeper explained. "I think now is the right time to deliver it." The box contained a diary and several architectural drawings. The diary belonged to Marianne, written in the months leading up to the accident. On the last pages, a surprising entry. "Richard and I broke up today. Years of emotional distance have finally reached their limit. I am devastated but also relieved. Paris will be a fresh start for me and Sophia. I hope that one day he finds someone who helps him tear down those walls he built around his heart. Someone who makes him understand that power and control are not substitutes for true connection. Sophia deserves a present father, not just a provider. I deserve complete love, not just loyalty. We all deserve second chances to get right what we got wrong on the first try. Richard read the words with a heavy heart, but without the overwhelming weight of guilt he had carried for years. He had made peace with his mistakes. He had honored Marianne's memory not through self-flagellation, but by building a meaningful life for Sophia and helping other traumatized children. The architectural drawings revealed another treasure: detailed plans for a child recovery center that Marianne had designed but never managed to implement. It was strikingly similar to the Flourish Institute, as if somehow her spirit had guided the creation of the space. "It's almost as if she knew," Richard murmured to Camilla as they examined the drawings. "As if she had planted the seed that would only germinate years later." "Perhaps she did plant it," Camilla replied softly. "Through Sophia, through you, through the circumstances that brought us together. Some stories need time to be completed. On the wedding day, held in the Whisper Garden itself with only close friends and family, Sophia surprised everyone with a special gift for the couple: a small handmade book titled The Bridge Between Two Worlds, containing all her drawings of bridges over the years, organized chronologically. The first ones were somber, with figures separated by abysses. Gradually, the bridges became more solid, the figures more defined. In the last drawings, 5 silhouettes holding hands crossed a colorful bridge under a star-filled sky. On the last page, Sophia had written in her still childlike handwriting, "A bridge doesn't erase the river that exists beneath it. It only creates a path for us to continue the journey when we thought it was over. Thank you for building bridges with me." Richard and Camilla moved, hugged the girl who had united their destinies in ways they could never have foreseen. In the special flower bed dedicated to Marianne's memory, white roses bloomed in abundance as if blessing that new chapter. Years later, when the Flourish Institute had already expanded to 5 states across the United States, and the garden method was studied internationally, Richard and Camilla still preserved the ritual of nightly strolls through the Whisper Garden. On one of those nights, observing the stars, he asked, "If you could go back in time, would you change anything in our story?" Camilla reflected for a moment, her face now marked by light expression lines that only made her more beautiful in Richard's eyes. "No," she finally replied, "because even the most difficult moments were necessary seeds. The arrogant businessman who fired me in that laundry room needed to exist so that the man I love could be born from him. The inexperienced educator I was needed challenges to become who I am today." Richard nodded, understanding deeply. Together, they had learned that gardens don't grow only with sun and flowers. They also need the darkness of the earth, the resistance of roots, the storms that test the strength of stems. True love, like the most resilient of plants, was not born of perfection, but of the ability to find beauty in imperfections, to transform scars into marks of character. In the center of the garden, 2 rose bushes grew intertwined, one white, planted by Sophia in Marianne's memory, and one red, a symbol of the reborn love that Camilla and Richard had patiently cultivated. Different, distinct, but together forming an arrangement of rare beauty that only attentive eyes could truly appreciate. And so, as the New York City sky covered itself with stars and the scent of night flowers filled the air, the Miller mansion, once a mausoleum of sorrows, now a sanctuary of healing, continued to tell its silent story. How a man, a woman, and 3 children had learned that true power lies not in building walls, but in cultivating gardens where love could flourish freely, without fear, without guilt, open to all the new beginnings that life generously offers to those brave enough to plant new seeds. The end of the story. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Richard, Camilla, and Sophia has touched your hearts. To follow this emotional journey, we have prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories about new beginnings, forgiveness, and love. Find it by clicking the link on the left. If this narrative resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like the video, and share it with anyone who might need to hear about the transformative power of love and perseverance. Every day we bring new stories that explore the complexity of life and the unexpected paths that destiny reserves for us. We look forward to reading your comments about which moment of this journey touched your heart the most. Until our next story.